Older cultures surrounded by mythos and folklore have always captured the imagination of creatives, and this is no different in video games. Take the God of War games, for instance, that explored both Greek and Norse mythologies, and rumored to be like Egyptian next or something, I don't know. But then there's also Black Myth Wukong that explored Chinese history. And it seems, especially lately, Japanese and overall Asian history and mythos is in the central spotlight. But there is one set of mythos that is often unexplored and not shown a lot in gaming or in media in general for that matter: the American Deep South. America is, in my experience, one of the most diverse places in the world, both in landscape and in ideologies. And I think the Deep South is one of the most culturally rich parts of the United States, and I'm always interested and willing to learn more about it. And what better place to do that than in a video game? So when I caught wind of South of Midnight, an action-adventure game set in the Deep South with a heavy focus on the folklore of the area, I was incredibly interested and excited to play this game. It is simultaneously one of the most generic games while also being one of the most unique. Stay with me now. So in an effort to keep you confused for as short as possible, let's cut to the chase and discuss South of Midnight.
Oh, Hazel! Ooh, nice duds. You been promoted at the Piggly Wiggly?
Oh, hey, Mr. None of the Floods, come to the cottage.
South of Midnight was developed by Compulsion Games, published by Xbox Game Studios, and was released on April 8, 2025 for Windows PCs and Xbox Series consoles. I played it on PC through PC Game Pass, so all footage you are seeing is from that platform, recorded using OBS. I also played a good chunk of this on my Lenovo Legion Go, and it ran largely without issue. I think I had the settings quite low, and there's one thing that I would do in the game that caused it to chug a little bit, but it was never at a crucial point, so it was not a big deal. All in all, this game is 100% playable on the Lenovo Legion Go. In South of Midnight, you play as Hazel Flood, a young woman who lives in Prospero County in the American South. Living in the South, hurricanes are always a threat, and sure enough, we see the opening of this game take place as Hazel and her mother Lacey are preparing for a hurricane. And after a spat about family relationships, Lacey sends Hazel to check on their neighbors to make sure everyone is prepared for the hurricane. But before Hazel can return home, she witnesses her house get washed away in the floodwaters with Lacey inside. Unable to keep up with the runaway home, Hazel loses track of the house. Unsure of what to do, Hazel turns to her grandmother, whom Hazel and Lacey have a strained relationship with. However, while at her grandmother's house, Hazel discovers mystical tools with otherworldly properties that could help her in her journey to find her mother. First and foremost, I want to address the stop-motionness of this game. Many of this game's animation, both in gameplay and cutscenes, utilizes the look of stop-motion animation, think like the Wallace and Gromit films or Fantastic Mr. Fox. However, the game does give you the option to turn this off, so many animations are smoother and not so stop-motion-y, if you will. I, never really being a big fan of stop-motion animation, did promptly turn this setting off, so there was very minimal stop-motion in my playthrough. So just wanted to throw that out there so no one is wondering why my game isn't all stop-motioned out, or for people who are like me and who don't like that style of animation but still want to play the game, they can accommodate that. So I feel the least best part about this game is the actual gameplay, and that is not because it is bad, but it's because it's as generic as can be. The gameplay revolves around two core elements. Element 1 is platforming through linear levels that have occasional optional paths that if you find and choose to go down, you are often rewarded with upgrade points. And in order to fully traverse each level, you have to use tried and true abilities of dashing, gliding, double jumps, wall runs, and even a grappling hook of sorts. Element number 2 is the combat. The combat consists of melee focused attacks paired with a handful of abilities that have their own cooldowns upon use, as well as unblockable enemy attacks that need to be avoided. Not to mention upgrade trees that allow your abilities to become more deadly and more useful, as well as unlocking new ones. And while you are in combat, you are typically fighting the standard array of enemies, or in this game, haints. Some examples of haints include, but are not limited to, the standard haint, a ranged haint, a haint that boosts the abilities of other haints, so on and so forth. That is such a weird word. It is just a weird thing to say. It is so generic that at one point I got introduced to a new haint type that was rather large and looked quite hulking, and I whispered to myself, this is probably going to be a brute haint or something. Then you'll never guess what came up on the screen.
Oh, man, that's a big one.
Safe to say I got a little chuckle out of that, but I think that conveys a good idea of just how generic this game can be at times, but definitely not all the time. But let me be clear, by no means is it bad. Platforming was fun and engaging, and was fun to romp around, and as someone who played this game on the hardest difficulty, combat presented a good challenge that required my full attention and forced me to use all my available tools in order to come out on top. But in terms of the core gameplay, this game takes a if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of approach, and I fully agree that this gameplay is not broken, but all because something is not broken does not mean it couldn't be better. In terms of gameplay, if you are a gamer, I can almost assure you that you have played a game nearly identical to South of Midnight. But where South of Midnight sets itself apart is in the style, vibes, and themes. Taking place in the American Deep South, you are exposed to a whole array of Southern folklore and mythos. Just about every boss and main character is directly named and shows characteristics of real-life Southern myths. The team at Compulsion Games did take some creative liberties with the appearance and some traits of these characters, but I believe that only adds to the mythos and the stories, because if every aspect of a myth was set in stone, then it wouldn't be much of a myth at that point. And the Southern influences don't stop there. Nearly every aspect of this game is at least inspired by the culture of the Southern United States. One of the most prevalent of these aspects is the soundtrack. Composed by Oliver Derivier, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, the soundtrack is composed of a majority of tracks that are heavily influenced by the Southern US. The track genres range from country music to Bayou/Cajun inspired music, and then there's swing and jazz with all kinds of horns and strings. As someone who is a lover of pretty much every kind of music, I was definitely vibing with this soundtrack for sure. But it isn't the best I've ever heard. Not like, let's say Doom Eternal, for instance. That one's definitely up there. But definitely one of the most unique ones I've heard. And one reason it is so unique, aside from the instruments and genres, was the inclusion of sang lyrics with the music. And I'm not talking like background vocals. Some of these songs are fully lyricized. I don't know. Let's go with lyricized, I guess. However you want to put it, with full verses, a chorus, and a bridge. In my personal experience, it is quite rare to encounter such music in a video game. You want the music to match the mood and be prevalent in the scene, but not distract the player from what their main focus is. And I personally feel many game soundtracks don't include full lyricized songs because the inclusion of lyrics in the music can be quite distracting, therefore taking your attention away from whatever is happening in the game. No research done behind that, just what I think, I want to make that clear. But importantly, although that may be what I think, that is not how I feel. I felt the music of South of Midnight was incredible, and no matter what song was playing, only added to the vibes and the ambiance of whatever was happening, whether that was exploring, platforming, combat, or a cutscene. And the situation was made even better when said accompanying track was lyricized. And even when there are background vocals, a lot of the time it is done by what sounds like a choir of children's singers, which very much gives me vibes of like church and Christianity, which again coincides with how prevalent this set of beliefs are in the Deep South. So although, like I said, there are games with soundtracks that I personally liked more, South of Midnight's was still in like the top 20%, 25%. I would say it's still really good, but also did so in such unique style. Well done, Oliver de Verrier. Along with the soundtrack, there are two other aspects of this game that sounded great, and that was the voice acting and the sound design. Starting with the voice acting, I want to stress that every voice actor did an incredible job as far as I'm concerned. However, I feel the actor who played Hazel, Adrian Ray, did a knockout job in particular. They never explicitly say Hazel's age, but they make it pretty clear that she is a young woman, either on the tail end of her high school journey or freshly graduated at the oldest. And much like many young people, Hazel thinks she knows best, but also simultaneously doubts herself a lot of the time. And because of this, she often experiences many conflicted emotions, and that is portrayed very well in her voice and acting and the moods she sounds like she is in. When Hazel sounds her best to me is when she is feeling compassion and empathy towards other people. Now, she doesn't know a lot of these people, so she has no overall connection to them, which I feel would make just bursting into tears or whatever a bit overkill. But when Hazel is voicing how she is feeling or thinking in these times, you can tell she has genuine concern for the well-being of these beings. It's kind of a weird sentence, but whatever. And feeling empathy for their often very troubled and hard to deal with past. It can often be hard to accurately voice or fully act as a teenager, because as anyone who has lived through that period of their lives know, it is a very complex time with all kinds of emotions and whatnot flowing through you, and accurately portraying it without it coming off as cheesy or cliche and over the top is not always the easiest thing to do. However, I feel Adrian Ray did a killer job as her role as Hazel, and I would not be upset if she got at least nominated for Best Performance at the upcoming Game Awards. And now let's talk about the sound design. Everything about the sound design of this game I felt was great, but the part that sticks out most to me is when you use your abilities. Hazel is what is known as, in the game world, a weaver. A weaver is someone who can use the power of strands to help repair the grand tapestry that ties all the creation together. In other words, helps fight off evil and keeps the world in as happy of a place as they can. And they do this by using sewing-based tools as weapons, and the same tools are sources for the abilities that you get. But the best part of this is when you use the abilities, there's like a choir of women who like sing or shout or something when you use most of your abilities. This in particular I really liked because I feel it not only added some weight and power to the abilities, but also because it is a subtle reminder that Hazel is next up in a long line of weavers. Hazel even uses the ghosts of previous weavers for assistance at times. So whenever I used one of these abilities, not only did it feel great, but it was a subtle reminder that Hazel has a lot on her shoulders for sure, but also she is not alone and has some of the most powerful women in the history of the game world backing her up. Lastly, just some tidbits before we close this out. Things that are kind of minor that I feel don't need a lot of attention, only a few sentences said about them. We only got 2 today. First one, I did mention I used every tool in my arsenal for combat. However, that was a little bit of a fib, as one ability I never really used was the ranged attack you get by holding the main attack button down. It was probably because I was on hard mode, but I was getting dogged so much and swarmed so fast that I didn't even have time to charge this ability up without taking damage. Plus, enemies were rarely far away enough to justify using it, especially after I unlocked the double dash ability and could close distances quite quickly. Number 2, there are parts in the game where you learn characters' backstories by clearing out combat rooms, but you learn these backstories by like observing sections in a linear story, but the game doesn't let you know the order in which to tackle these combat rooms. So I often got these backstories with the chapters all out of order, and that was kind of annoying. Even if I still understood what was happening, I still would have liked it to just be like, hey, I can go for whatever one I want, but maybe like number them so I know which one's in order, and I can either choose to follow that or ignore it if I want. I hope I did a good job of explaining why this is simultaneously one of the most generic, but also one of the most unique games. I am willing to bet that if you are even a casual gamer, you have probably played a game that is very mechanically similar to this, but the style and setting of South of Midnight and how it dives headfirst into the folklore of the American Deep South really makes it stand out. Think of South of Midnight and other games that are kind of similar to it gameplay-wise as cars. Let's say they're something simple but reliable, a like late 90s Japanese pickup truck. Underneath, mechanically, they are all identical. Every one of these trucks is just as reliable as the next. But whereas many of them have just factory paint jobs of black and gray, you notice one of those trucks has a wildly interesting paint job, neon colors everywhere, flashy rims, and a bumping sound system. Out of all the trucks, this is the one that sticks out the most visually. That truck is South of Midnight. Sure, it can only haul as much and carry as much as the rest of the pickup trucks. It's no better, no worse, but it looks a hell of a lot better while doing it. And that is how I would describe South of Midnight.
The wolf! No. The bill!
Sick green sky and tornadoes flying. How much longer until the river's rising? Birds fall silent and the critters are hiding when mucky swamps and dusty lands colliding.
South of Midnight was a really nice adventure into Southern culture, but not as nice as you are for watching this video. Thank you for your time and attention for watching this video. I appreciate it so much. If you like this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button as it goes a long way for us here at Milkman Media. Next, I will be taking on a game called Haste, and at the time of recording, once again, I am already finished with it. On the surface, it didn't really seem like my thing, but I saw some gameplay online and it caught my attention enough for me to play it. Kind of like a 3D speed platformer roguelike type thing. So if that seems like something you want to hear more about, make sure you subscribe to the channel, as well as for all your other food and gaming needs. Lastly, I would love to hear what you think about South of Midnight, Southern folklore, Xbox's ever-confusing strategy, or anything else on your mind. I'd love to hear about that in the comments below. Thank you so much again for your time and attention. I look forward to talking to you in the comments, but as always, I'll see you in the next one.